Her own father sent her away, chose his reputation over his daughter, trying to cover up the shame before the neighbors ever found out. She ended up in a quiet corner of Colorado, agreeing to marry a silent, hardworking rancher named Liam, a man she didn't know, and who didn't ask questions. They lived under the same roof like two strangers, each too wounded to reach for the other. But one day, when a man with a rifle came out of nowhere and attacked her, Liam didn't hesitate. He stepped in, risking his life to protect hers. And from that moment on, something began to grow between them, something neither of them had ever known. Welcome to Weathered Stories. Today, I'm going to tell you a story about two people brought together when their lives were at their lowest. They didn't choose each other, but somehow, in the middle of all that pain and uncertainty, something real began to take root. Can they leave the past behind and build a future together? Can love grow in a place where it was never expected? If you're ready to find out what these two had to face to finally become a family, hit that like button and let's begin. Ellie's father stood by the window, silent. The rain had just started, a soft spring drizzle, but inside the house it felt colder than a Colorado winter. He held a letter in his hands, not the one they'd all been hoping for. Ellie could tell he'd read it over and over. Now he just stared into nothing, like he still expected the words to change if he looked long enough. "It's not happening," he finally said, voice low and flat. "He didn't even mention your name. Not once." Ellie stood in the middle of the room, holding her worn-out shawl. Her chest tightened the same way it had the day she realized she was pregnant. Back then, he was still around. Now, all she had was silence. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she whispered. I didn't think I'd be left on my own." Her father turned. He was a preacher in their small town, a man of rules and reputation. But right now, he wasn't looking at a sinner. He was looking at his daughter. And he didn't know what was worse, the shame it brought, or the way her voice sounded like she'd already disappeared. "Ellie," he said slowly, choosing each word like it weighed 100 pounds. "I found a way. There's a man, a farmer. He lives way out past the borderlands, near Colorado. He's willing to marry you. It's not love, but he's decent, reliable, and he knows about the baby too." Ellie sank into the nearest chair. Her legs couldn't hold her up anymore. She'd expected something: anger, silence, maybe even pity. But not hope, and certainly not forgiveness. And yet, even knowing what was coming, some small part of her had still wished for it. That part dimmed now. "I can't stay here," she said, almost too softly to hear. "People look at me like I'm not even a person anymore." Her father nodded. "It's for the best. Train leaves in the morning. I packed a bag. There's some money in the side pocket. It's not much, but it'll get you there." Her mother came in just once, didn't meet Ellie's eyes. She placed a worn Bible into her hands and murmured, "If you can, forgive us." The train station was nearly empty. The rain picked up, tapping hard against the tin roof. The wood planks beneath Ellie's feet groaned as she stood alone on the platform, clutching her bag. Her father didn't hug her, didn't say much at all. He just set her suitcase down next to her and said, "Don't blame us. And don't come back. It's better this way." She didn't respond, just nodded. Inside her chest, everything pulled tight, like right before a fall. The train appeared in the distance, moving slow, like a decision no one wanted to make. She stepped up onto the train without looking back. Behind her was everything she used to know. Ahead, a stranger, an unfamiliar house, and a child she hadn't even held yet. Her chest felt hollow. But deep down, somewhere small, there was still the faintest spark. Maybe, just maybe, this could be a beginning. The train pulled away. Ellie clenched her shawl tight and turned her face from the window. There were no more tears left to cry. The station was barely more than a bench, a leaning telegraph pole, and a shade awning that looked like it had been there since the war. As the train slowed with a metal grind, Ellie felt something tighten in her chest. She wiped her palms on the hem of her dress and hugged her worn bag to her chest. Out the window, no familiar faces. Just a man in a plain gray coat and a hat, standing off to the side, hands in his pockets, eyes looking anywhere but at the train. When the train finally stopped, Ellie stepped down onto the platform. The wind was dry and dusty. The man walked toward her slowly. Tall, broad-shouldered, sun-worn face. Rough features, But his eyes were quiet. The kind of quiet you only find in houses where no one's raised their voice in a long time. Ellie. His voice was low, a little rough around the edges. She nodded. Liam Colton, he said. I'm here to meet you. He didn't reach for her hand, just stepped forward and took her bag from her gently. Ellie didn't know what to say. She just nodded again and followed him, doing her best not to look at the folks watching from the porch across the way. The wagon was tied up off to the side. Simple harness, reliable horse. He helped her up without touching her, then climbed in beside her. They set off. The road pulled them away from the town, away from the noise. Liam said nothing. Ellie stole glances at him, his hands, strong and calloused, his face steady, always looking forward. She didn't feel afraid. She didn't feel comfort either. Just a strange kind of calm. He didn't try to talk, and there was something respectful in that. After a while, he finally spoke. House ain't new, but it's solid. Got water piped in. Room's ready. There's a window in it. Thank you, Ellie said softly. He nodded. I'm still on the road. If you need anything, just ask. They rode on in silence. A dog barked somewhere far off. The train was long gone, leaving only the smell of smoke and iron behind. And Ellie realized there was no turning back. All she had now was this road, this man, and an old wagon creaking through the dust. Liam's house sat up on a small rise, a little ways off the dirt road. It wasn't new, but it was strong, solid boards, a roof with no leaks, a wide porch with a swing. Inside, it smelled like wood, bread, and something else. Oil, leather, fresh-cut hay. Ellie stepped through the doorway carefully, like even the silence might break if she wasn't careful. He gave her the quick tour. Kitchen was small, but clean. A wooden table, 2 chairs. Tin sink with a water bucket in the corner. One room with a stove, that was his. The room across the hall would be hers. This one's yours, he said, opening the door. It was simple. A narrow bed near the window, a clean quilt, a wash basin, and a little dresser with a bar of soap set out, like it had been waiting. Ellie nodded. Thank you, she whispered. He stood in the doorway for a second, then added, I get up early. Tomorrow I'll show you the well, the shed, so you know where things are. All right. He left without another word. His steps were so quiet, they barely made a sound. Ellie sat on the edge of the bed, hands in her lap. Everything felt unfamiliar, but not unfriendly. Just neutral, like a place that didn't know her yet. Liam was the same. Not cold, not warm. Just a man who'd stopped expecting anything from life a long time ago. She unpacked her things, 2 dresses, a brush, an old book. She placed the Bible her mother had given her on the windowsill, looked at it, then looked away. Dinner was quiet. Liam set out bread, beans, and a bit of dried meat, sat across from her, and ate slow, sometimes glancing out the window. Ellie kept her eyes down, but somehow, his silence didn't feel heavy. There was a peace in it. When it got dark, he stood up and said, I'll be in the barn for a while, then turning in. My door's across the hall, if you need anything. She nodded. Thanks. Good night. Night. And just like that, he was gone. The house went still. No voices. No footsteps. No town noise. Just the old boards creaking now and then. Ellie lay down and stared at the ceiling. Her chest felt empty. No anger, no sorrow. Just silence. The kind that feels strange at first, and then starts to feel like something you could get used to. The night passed in fits and starts. Ellie would drift off, only to wake again at every groan of the old house, as if the silence itself kept checking to see if she was still breathing. By morning, when the first light touched the windowsill, she sat up and wrapped her shawl around her shoulders. The world outside the glass felt like someone else's life. Even the wind seemed foreign, but the feeling stirring inside her, that was familiar. Memory. She closed her eyes. She remembered the first time she saw him, in the city library. He'd come in for a newspaper, teasing the staff like he'd known them forever. Ellie had handed him a book. He smiled. That smile had felt real. Safe. He was older. Married. But he'd said things a man knows how to say when he wants a woman to believe. He told her they were just living side by side, not really together. Said he'd leave. Said he'd change everything. Just needed time. Then she told him about the baby. He went quiet. And then he disappeared. She didn't cry. Not then. Just sat in her room, staring at the wall. Her mother never asked. Her father figured it out. And from there, it all unraveled. The shame wasn't the worst part. Worse was the loneliness. The quiet way the whole town pushed her out, without saying a word. Nobody said it to her face. But they all knew. And they all went silent. Ellie opened her eyes. The sun had climbed higher now. She heard horses snort behind the house. Liam was probably out in the barn already. He didn't know her whole past. Or maybe he did. But he didn't ask. Didn't judge. He was just there. She pulled the shawl tighter against her chest. The house was still unfamiliar. But it wasn't frightening. Just quiet. And that was something she could live with. The next morning, Liam knocked on Ellie's door but didn't open it. "Market day," he said from the hallway. "We're low on flour. If you're up for it, we'll head into town." Ellie dressed quickly, but her heartbeat was all out of rhythm. Town meant people. And people meant stares, questions. But she couldn't bring herself to say no. The ride was short and quiet again. Liam didn't push for conversation, just nodded at turns and let the horses do the talking. Ellie kept her eyes on the landscape, as if she could disappear into it. Town greeted them with dust and glances. As soon as Liam pulled the wagon up to the market, Ellie felt every part of her tense. People noticed. Some just glanced. Others whispered to whoever was beside them. Liam paid no mind. He stepped down and offered her his hand. She barely touched it as she climbed down. It was hot in the sun, but Ellie felt cold all over. Her heart pounded like it wasn't blood in her chest, but stone. They passed by stalls full of fabric, spices, tobacco. Faces everywhere. Men greeted Liam. Women eyed Ellie, sizing her up. Some offered polite smiles. Others held theirs back. A few didn't bother pretending at all. They stopped at a produce stand. Liam grabbed a sack of potatoes and a couple of cans of beans. He paid slow and steady, like nothing was out of place. Ellie stood quietly beside him, as if she wasn't even there. Then a woman stepped up beside her. Light-colored dress, lace at the sleeves. Her face was smooth, but her mouth held tension. "Well, good morning," she said directly to Ellie. "I'm Susan Hart, pastor's wife. Known Liam for years. You must be the new one." Ellie nodded, unsure what to say. Her hands went cold. "And when did y'all get married, if you don't mind me asking?" Susan continued, voice sweet but sharp. "Funny, we didn't hear a thing. Folks round here usually don't keep things like that hush-hush." Ellie looked down, as if something had dropped by her feet. Her heart pounded louder than the crowd around them. "Not long ago," she murmured. "It was quiet. Real simple." "I see," Susan said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Different times now, I suppose. Not like it used to be." And with that, she walked off without waiting for an answer. Liam returned with the bags. His face was calm as ever. He didn't ask what had been said. Just headed for the wagon. "You held up fine," he said once they were on the road again. "Folks around here talk more than they should. Listen less than they ought." Ellie stared at her lap. She wanted to crawl out of her skin, to scrub off the way they'd looked at her, whispered about her, made her feel like she didn't belong. "I think they figured it out," she said under her breath. "That we're not, that this isn't exactly." "Let 'em think what they want," he cut in, not harsh, just certain. "We don't owe them anything. Especially the ones who couldn't bother to ask your name." His words were simple, but they reached somewhere deep. She gave a small nod. The hills were starting to show on the horizon again, the road home. But her chest still felt heavy. The market was behind them, but it clung to her like road dust, settled deep in the seams, hard to shake off. Ellie was up before the rooster crowed. Her window was fogged just a little from the cool morning air. She sat up in bed, wiped her eyes, and then noticed something. Right by the headboard sat a tin pitcher filled with fresh water, a matching cup beside it, and a folded towel laid out neat and clean. Someone had placed it there quietly. No words. No fuss. Just a small act left behind. She pressed the towel gently to her face and sat like that for a while. There was no pity in the gesture. No obligation. Just care, simple and honest. When she stepped outside, the sun had just begun spilling gold across the yard. Liam was already out in the barn. She could hear the steady rhythm of a hammer, the low voice he used with the horses. He worked like someone who'd done it his whole life, checking the beams, tossing fresh hay, scrubbing out the troughs. He didn't look her way, didn't call out. He was just there. Steady. Ellie wandered the edge of the porch. As she stepped down, her shoe caught on a loose board, dry, cracked, and barely hanging on. There was a snap, and the step gave under her foot. She grabbed the railing, her heart jumping. Liam came out of the barn almost instantly. "You all right?" he asked, calm but already moving toward her. "Almost fell through," she said, still staring at the broken wood. He crouched down to take a look. "Old one," he muttered. "Should have replaced it sooner. I'll fix it now." No promises. "No, I'll get to it." Just a simple answer, and he was off. Within minutes, he returned with a plank, nails, and tools. He didn't talk much, just went to work. Hands steady. Movement sure. It wasn't showy. It wasn't for her benefit. This was a man who knew how to build something solid, and then just leave it better than it was. Ellie thought about offering help, but something told her she didn't need to. He wasn't expecting it. She watched as he measured the wood by feel, hammered in the nails, and set the step firm. He wasn't a man of speeches, but in the quiet way he worked, there was something she recognized. He didn't force comfort. He just created it, nail by nail. When he finished, he stood, brushed his hands on his pants, and glanced over at her. "Won't break now," he said. No grin, no smugness, just certainty. Ellie realized she was smiling. Not a wide grin, not for show, but real, small, the kind that sneaks up on you. Liam caught it, nodded once, and turned back to the barn. No questions. She stayed on the porch a while, then sat down right on the new step. And for the first time, she didn't feel like a guest in that house. It was late, the kind of quiet that settles deep into the wood of a house. Ellie was asleep. Her door was slightly ajar, and through the stillness, Liam could just make out the soft, steady rhythm of her breathing. Peaceful, even. In the kitchen, the kerosene lamp gave off a gentle glow. Liam sat at the table, a cup of cold coffee in one hand and a torn sheet of paper in front of him. His handwriting was large and steady, tilted just a bit to the right. But the pencil hovered above the page for a while, like he didn't quite know where to begin. Eventually, he started at the top. "Hey, Ben." It was the first letter in years. His brother had moved to Texas, built a ranch, wrote only when there was something that couldn't be left unsaid. Tonight, Liam felt the same. Asterisk, "You're probably surprised I finally wrote back. Truth is, the house ain't just mine anymore. Her name's Ellie. Young. Looks like she's from a different world. East Coast, maybe. Her father arranged it. Or forced it. I don't really know. She's here on an agreement. Supposed to be my wife. Don't ask how or why, it's complicated. Asterisk." He paused, then wrote slower now. Asterisk, "At first, I thought she was too soft. Like glass. Look at her wrong and she'd shatter. But that's not her. She's scared. Quiet. But not broken. She tries around the house, never complains. Not once has she asked for pity." Asterisk. Liam's eyes drifted to the hallway. Still quiet. Asterisk, "Sometimes I catch her sitting by the window, just still. She thinks no one's watching. I don't know what's going through her head. But whatever it is, it's not empty. It's like she's waiting. For something good. For someone to prove it's not all lost." Asterisk. He stopped again, then added the truth he hadn't expected to write. Asterisk. "I think I'm starting to see her. Not like some duty I signed up for. As a person. One with her own weight, her own fire." Asterisk. The pencil rested. He reread what he'd written, then folded the page neatly and slipped it into an envelope. He'd drop it off at the post the next time he rode into town. The coffee was cold. He poured it down the sink and set the cup aside. Before turning in, Liam looked once more at Ellie's door. Still breathing. Still there. And in that silence, he felt something shift. They weren't just sharing a roof anymore. Something real was beginning to take root. Ellie stood at the window, twisting a handkerchief between her fingers. Storm clouds were gathering, slow, heavy, full of something unspoken. The air felt thick, like the ground itself was holding its breath. Behind her, Liam sat at the table, fixing a worn leather strap from the harness. Everything looked the same. Quiet. Routine. But inside her, something had started to boil. "I can't do this anymore," she said. The words were soft, but they didn't shake. Liam looked up. He didn't flinch, didn't frown, just set the strap aside. "I don't know who I am here," she went on, voice trembling. "I'm not your wife, not exactly a guest. Folks in town look at me like I stole something. And you don't say anything. We just live here, like we're furniture. I'm scared. I feel alone. And most days, it's like I don't even exist." He sat in silence for a long moment, then said, calm and even, "I'm not keeping you here. If you decide to go, I won't stop you." Ellie nodded, like she'd expected those words. But inside, it felt worse. She hadn't really wanted to leave. She just wanted to be seen, to matter. And what he'd offered her was freedom, but not belonging. "I'm not trying to run," she whispered. "I just don't know how to stay." Liam didn't answer. He stood up, picked up the strap, and walked out to the barn. The door didn't slam. It never did. It just closed. Soft, final. That night, the rain came. First a whisper, then a roar. Wind howled, thunder rolled low across the sky. Ellie lay awake, eyes open, listening to it. And then, a sound above her. A shuffle. A drip. Another. Water began leaking through the ceiling, landing in slow, cold splashes on the floor. She got up, set a tin bowl beneath it. The old beam overhead must have finally given in. The drops pinged against the metal like a quiet little bell. Her door creaked. Liam stood there, holding a lantern in one hand, a blanket in the other. "Roof's leaking." She nodded. "Yeah, come take my room," he said, plain and simple. "It's dry in there. I'll go check the barn roof, then sleep in the kitchen. That leak's been waiting to happen." She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. So she grabbed her pillow and walked past him. And in that small moment passing by, seeing him not as a man keeping his distance, but as someone who would never leave her standing in the rain, she felt it. He was more than a roof over her head. He was trying. Quietly. Steadily. Like everything else he did. The rain hadn't stopped by morning. It had just softened, like the sky was tired of crying but didn't quite know how to quit. When Ellie opened her eyes, Liam was already up on the roof. Through the fogged window, she could see him carefully working, pulling a canvas tarp over the leaking section, moving with steady patience. She stepped outside barefoot, wrapping a coat over her nightdress. "What are you doing up there?" "It's slippery," she said, walking closer. He glanced down, his face wet, hair plastered to his forehead. "Gotta patch it before evening. If it gets worse, I won't be able to get up here. Can you give me a hand?" Ellie nodded without saying a word. She held the ladder, handed him nails, helped him stretch the tarp. At first, they worked in silence. Then Liam spoke. "Last year, when it rained like this, I was up here alone. Looked like a fool hopping around, trying to fix things with one hand." "Well," Ellie said quietly, "guess you're lucky to have a helper now." She surprised herself with how easy that sounded. Liam smiled, really smiled for the first time. And something about it made her laugh. Not loud, but true. The kind that bubbles up before you even realize it. The rain picked up again, pounding the roof, their faces. The tarp slipped, falling over both of them like a soaked blanket. They laughed together, tangled in the fabric, breathless and dripping. "I give up," Liam said. "Guess the sky's got other plans for us today." "Then let's at least get soaked for a reason," Ellie said, hopping down from the ladder. "I'll make us real coffee. Hot, strong." They went inside, clothes clinging to their skin, cheeks flushed with wet and laughter. Liam paused on the porch to wring out a shirt. Ellie passed by, then turned to him. "Liam, thank you," she said softly, looking him in the eye. "No flourishes. Just truth." He nodded. "Don't mention it." But in that nod, something unspoken passed between them, acceptance, warmth, maybe even the start of something neither of them had dared to name. By evening, the rain finally eased, leaving behind a heavy silence that clung to everything like wet wool. Liam rode into town for supplies, nails, a little salt, some oil. Ellie stayed home, warming blankets by the stove and drying the tarp before the damp could set in. When he returned, there was a shadow in his expression. He stepped inside without a word, hung his hat on the nail by the door, and wiped his face with a rag. "Something happened?" Ellie asked, handing him a mug of warm tea. He took a sip, then set it down and sat across from her. "Someone new's been spotted near the county line," he said evenly. "Broke into the miller's place. Took some food. A horse. No one saw his face. Folks say he's armed, traveling alone, and mean enough to make trouble." Ellie felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. "Anyone hurt?" "No. Just scared." He's been creeping around at night. Comes when folks are sleeping. Sheriff's out looking, but no one knows where he is now. Liam looked toward the window, the lamplight catching the set of his jaw. Then he turned back to her. Listen close, he said gently. For the next few days, no walking out alone. Not to the well. Not past the barn. You need something, you ask me. And keep the door locked, even in the daytime. Ellie nodded. Okay. He hesitated, then added, quieter. Don't be scared. I've got a rifle, and I know how to use it. It wasn't just a promise. It was the first time he let her know he wouldn't let anything happen to her. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. The wind howled outside again, and clouds thickened on the edge of the horizon. But inside their little house, things felt steadier. Ellie walked to the window, let the curtain fall. And even as a cold flicker of fear brushed against her heart, she knew she wasn't facing it alone. Someone was standing between her and the dark. The night wouldn't settle. Coyotes howled somewhere off in the distance, and the wind scratched at the shutters like someone trying to claw their way inside. Ellie lay awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling, heart beating quietly in the dark. Thoughts came like unwelcome guests, slow, persistent. She got up, made herself weak tea, and sat by the window. On her lap rested a worn notebook with a cracked spine, something she'd packed months ago and hadn't touched since she arrived. The pencil in her hand trembled, just a little. She brushed her fingers over the first clean page, then began to write. I still feel like a guest here, like I've overstayed where I was never meant to be. But tonight, something shifted. I realized I don't want to be a stranger in this house anymore. She paused, listening to the silence. The stove crackled gently in the next room. Somewhere in the walls, a board creaked, maybe Liam checking the locks again. He always checked. Quietly, carefully, like everything else he did. He doesn't ask for anything. Doesn't look at me the way folks did back home. He just shows up, fixes the roof, brings water. He doesn't say much, but when he does, it's honest. And I'm starting to notice. I feel calm when he's near. She paused again, looked at her reflection in the window. Loose hair, bare face. No fear anymore, just tiredness, and a strange, soft sadness that didn't hurt like it used to. Back to the page. Liam. I haven't said his name out loud. Not once. Only in my head. But now it's written, and it feels real. He's not just the man I live with. He's the one I can trust with silence. Her hand slowed. Then, with a breath, she added, and I think about the baby. More and more. He's not here yet. But already, I'm scared for him. Scared we'll be alone again. Scared I'll mess everything up. But then I see Liam. How he lines up his nails so neat. How he tucks my blanket back in without saying a word. And I wonder, maybe we'll be okay. Not just me. Us. Then him. She drew a slow period at the end of the sentence. Ran her fingers gently across the page. And for the first time in a long while, something inside her chest loosened. Ellie closed the notebook, wrapped the leather tie around it, and slipped it under her pillow. She laid down, pulling the quilt up to her chin. The baby stirred, soft and low inside her belly. She placed her hand gently on the rise there, closed her eyes, and whispered, We're home, little one. Outside, the wind finally quieted. The house groaned and shifted like old timber does, but it didn't scare her anymore. And in that hush, for the first time, Ellie didn't just feel like she'd stayed. She felt like she'd begun. Morning broke clear and deceptively calm. After days of rain and worry, the sun finally reached the dirt yard and warmed the earth enough that Ellie let herself exhale, just a little. Liam was still asleep, first time she'd ever woken before him. She didn't mean to do anything risky. She just wanted to fetch some water. Make breakfast. She didn't even think about the warning, how he'd told her not to go outside alone. The bucket felt light in her hands as she stepped outside. The yard was quiet. A rooster crowed somewhere in the distance, and a lone horse wandered just past the fence. The well was set a bit past the barn. She rounded the corner, the morning air still cool against her skin. She leaned forward to loop the bucket onto the crank. When an arm clamped around her from behind, a hand slammed over her mouth. Rough cloth. Stale sweat. Foreign smell. He wasn't from around here. He yanked her back into him. Hot breath, scratchy beard, a stench that hit like rot. Her eyes widened in terror as she caught a glimpse of the rifle slung over his shoulder. Her heart thundered in her ears. "Quiet," the man hissed, his voice cracked and mean. "You scream. I put a bullet in your leg. Where are the horses? Where's the food?" Ellie froze. She couldn't scream, couldn't move. Her whole body turned to stone. And then, a gunshot cracked through the yard like lightning. The grip on her loosened. She hit the ground hard, gasping for air. Behind her, barefoot, in just a shirt, rifle smoking in his hands, stood Liam. His face was set hard, focused. Another shot rang out, this time in the air. The bandit stumbled back, turned, limped, and disappeared behind the barn, swearing under his breath. Liam lowered the rifle. But then he swayed. "Liam!" Ellie screamed, scrambling up. Blood bloomed dark across his shoulder. "You're hit," she cried. "Just a graze," he grunted. "You're okay. That's what matters." She wrapped her arms around him, tight, shaking, her cheek against his chest. His breathing was ragged, but he pulled her close in return. Solid. Steady. And then quietly, honestly, she said it. "You're my husband." Not because of the deal. Not because it was expected. Because now it was true. Liam met her eyes. No pain there. No fear. Only something warm and real, rooted in the soil beneath them. And for the first time since the train ride west, Ellie didn't feel like she was surviving. She felt like she was home. Liam sat at the kitchen table, his shirt off and his side freshly cleaned. The wound still stung, but it had stopped bleeding. Ellie stood beside him, tying the bandage with a piece of clean cloth soaked in warm, salty water. Her hands were steady now, no tremble like the one she'd had by the well. This time, her touch wasn't just careful, it was sure. And in her eyes, there wasn't just worry anymore. There was something deeper, something warmer. "Hurting bad?" she asked softly, adjusting the knot. Liam winced, not from the pain, but almost like he was embarrassed. "I've had worse," he muttered. Only now, he gave her a sideways glance. "At least this scar'll have a story. Not from a horse. Not from a nail in the barn. A real one." Ellie gave a small laugh. "Gonna be proud of it?" He smirked, just a little. "If someone asks, I'll say I was defending a lady's honor. And it won't even be a lie." She finished the wrap and sat down across from him. The room was quiet, save for the slow crackle from the stove. After a pause, Ellie said, "Liam, I've been thinking. Even if this hadn't happened," she nodded toward the bandage, "even if there hadn't been a marriage, I would have stayed anyway." He turned toward her. Slowly. His eyes were steady and soft. "Why?" he asked. "Because when I'm around you, I'm not scared," she said. "Not 'cause you're strong or have a rifle. Because you don't pretend. You don't play at kindness. You just are. Real. And this house, this place, it's the first time I felt safe. Really safe." Liam didn't answer right away. He just looked at her. Long enough that it felt like silence was part of the words. Then finally, in a voice low and honest, he said, "If you'd chosen to leave, I don't think I could have let you go." Ellie blinked slowly, like she was letting those words settle inside her. Then she answered, quiet but certain, "I'm not going anywhere. Not ever." He reached across the table. She took his hand. And they sat like that, no more words, no more explanations. Just two people, side by side, holding on. Not because they had to, but because now they chose to. Together. Weeks passed. Winter left as quietly as it came. The ground softened, the sun grew warmer, and the days stretched a little longer. Ellie moved slower now, her belly round and full, but there was a peace in her steps. Liam had built a new bench near the porch, just so she could sit outside and rest, looking out over the fields. In the evenings, he read to her, awkwardly, sometimes stumbling over the words, but he tried. And she listened, smiling softly, one hand resting over the gentle kicks of the life inside her. When labor came, it did so with no warning, only that quiet certainty women seem to carry deep in their bones. The pain came in waves. Real. Strong. Unforgiving. Liam didn't panic. He ran straight to fetch Mrs. Holloway, the only woman in the area who had delivered more babies than she could count. By the time he returned, out of breath, Ellie was pale, but steady. "I'm all right," she said, gripping his hand tight. "Just stay with me." And he did. Hour after hour passed. The wind outside grew still, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Neighbors began to arrive one by one, quietly, with pots of soup, warm bread, handmade baby blankets. Folks who had once only whispered now came to help, no questions asked. And then, a cry. Sharp, clear, bright as spring sunlight after a long storm. A boy. Mrs. Holloway wrapped him in soft cloth and handed him to Ellie. She pulled him close to her chest, eyes closed, tears running down her cheeks, not from pain or fear, but from something clean, bright. Liam stood nearby, watching. His eyes held something new, something unsure. Ellie looked up at him, smiling, and said, "Here, hold him. He's your son." He took the baby with both hands, gently, like he was holding something too precious to name. He looked down at the boy, then back at Ellie. "He's real," he whispered. "Really ours." "Yes," she said. "Ours." He sat down on the bed beside her, one arm around Ellie, the other cradling his son. Outside, birds sang. The house was warm. And in that soft, golden silence, something else was born. Not just a name, not just a child, but a family. Real, quiet, strong. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting everything in that soft golden glow only late evening can bring. The air was warm still. Even the leaves seemed too at peace to move. On the front porch, 2 rocking chairs swayed gently. In one sat Ellie, a blanket draped over her shoulders and the baby nestled against her chest. He was asleep, deep and calm, the kind of sleep only someone truly safe can have. Liam sat beside her, arms resting on his knees, eyes on the horizon. The field stretched out ahead of them, where soon fresh green would begin to rise again. The air smelled like wood, warm milk, and something that just felt like home. "He sleeps deep," Liam said quietly. "Like he already knows this world ain't so scary anymore." Ellie nodded. "He knows. He feels it. This place is calm now." For a long while, they didn't speak. They just listened to the creak of the chairs, the soft shifting of the house, the even breath of their child. Then Liam spoke, low, almost like a thought said out loud. "I never thought someone else's pain could turn into my hope." Ellie looked over at him. There was no fear in her eyes anymore. Just warmth. "I never thought I'd find home in a place I didn't expect anything from," she said. "But you became it. You became my home, Liam." He nodded, still watching the sky. "There's 3 of us now. That's not just living. That's something more." Ellie smiled. "That's a family." The baby stirred, sighed, and Ellie gently tucked the blanket tighter around him. In the sky, long streaks of rose-colored clouds drifted above. The wind passed through the tall grass like a warm hand. This house, once just a roof, once just a contract, was now a place where fear had ended, where silence wasn't lonely anymore. It was the beginning of a new life, not just for the child, but for them too. The sun had all but slipped behind the hills, leaving behind long streaks of gold and soft rose stretching across the sky, like a road that goes on forever. The air cooled, just enough to remind them the day was ending, but not enough to take the warmth out of the moment. Liam and Ellie still sat on the porch, side by side. The baby slept nearby in his cradle, breathing slow and easy, his tiny fingers twitching every now and then. They didn't talk, because everything worth saying had already been said. And the silence between 2 people, when there's no weight in it, no fear, isn't empty at all. It's closeness, real closeness. Liam turned his head and looked at her, long and quiet, not searching for anything, not waiting for words, just looking the way a man does when he knows, truly knows, that the person beside him is home. "I love you," he said softly. No grand speeches, no swelling music, just those 3 words, plain and true. Not for the first time, but somehow still like the first. Ellie looked at him and smiled. Not big, not dramatic, just warm. The kind of smile that comes from somewhere deep and still. "I know," she said. "I love you too." And then they sat there again, in the hush of a settling evening. The chairs rocked gently. The baby shifted but didn't wake. Inside, the wood stove crackled like a tree whispering its last story for the night. A breeze moved through the field, carrying the smell of clean grass and a day well lived. There were no wagons, no shouting, no noise in the distance, only peace. And if there were a camera, it would pull back slow now, past the porch, past the house, out toward the hills, toward the sky where the last of the light was melting into the horizon. And in that silence, there was no emptiness, There was everything. If this story touched your heart, go ahead and hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe. There's always warmth here, even if there's a snowstorm outside your window. We'll see you next time, out here on the quiet trails of the old American West.